All right, here we are talking about Bristol dirt, obviously in a new location. Kind of tried to tell you guys I was going to be out of town until the end of April. Now, Brandon, you sound like you're 100 feet away from the microphone. What are you doing? Well, it's right here, and it doesn't have a cord in it. First thing I pack, and I forget the cord to this. So, or another one. Hopefully, it'll be here tomorrow. If not, I guess I'll figure something out. Secondly, let's talk about things that we learned from last year's Bristol race, and not necessarily from the race itself, but from an approach standpoint. Entering the week, what are things that I think we either overreacted to last year, put too much value in last year, and what I think we should be doing differently. And so last year, clearly, we spent a lot of time looking at the other, and I guess little pre discussion talk. I've been watching Bristol Dirt like nonstop over the past month. However long they've been doing it, been watching the modifieds, the street stocks, the four cylinders, just to see what the track is going to do, seeing how it's acting. I've already done all that type of stuff, so I'm just getting that out there as well. I'm trying to get out things that I want to touch base on. In case you're new watching here, it's not always like this. I usually have a microphone in my own room. I'm out of town this week and next week. Um, One thing that I think we're doing too much of is, does driver A have any dirt experience? Okay, and I think we clearly saw last year that these cars are not driving like any other dirt vehicle out there. Okay, so they're their own beast. Okay, the more understanding of how the dirt changes leans into the driver a lot more than have you raced a late model on a flat dirt track. That I don't think there's a lot of similarities between that, to be honest with you. And I know the media is gonna bump it up this weekend of, oh, so and so has been running dirt midgets to understand dirt racing. So and so has been running a modified in Florida. So and so has been running this. So and so ran a late model at Bristol Dirt 2.5 weeks ago. Whatever the case is, I don't think it's necessarily important. I don't think that's leaning towards that driver being a better driver entering this weekend. And I know we're going to hear it across from different news sources, and certainly the broadcast are going to talk about that stuff. When it comes to me, like let's use Larson as an example, because everybody's gonna be like, Larson has experience on dirt. Um, sure, Larson's great on dirt. I absolutely want to enter this weekend looking at the end of the practice sessions and how these cars and how these drivers perform in the heat races. Doesn't matter if they grew up racing dirt racing for me. Doesn't matter if we've seen them win on dirt before. Doesn't matter. It's very similar to this year and Cup in general, to where throw out a lot of the old data. Dead serious, man. I've been saying it all year. When this year started, throw out data. Don't lean on data heavily. Maybe use it as like a last reference if you're debating one or two drivers, but throw that data out. Very similar to this. We are not looking. I want you to enter this weekend not having any expectations, any prior knowledge of anybody's dirt history. I know it's going to be hard to look at it that way, but when we see the drivers, honest to God, want you to see them as driver A, B, C, and D, just with a salary by their name that changes, and then looking at how these guys ran, say the last 10 minutes of practice, say how they looked in the heat races. These races are very much you can see it. Do they pass the eye test? Do they look comfortable in these races? Do they look comfortable on a certain track type? That's what we're focusing on this weekend. It's not Chase Briscoe grew up racing dirt racing. Justin Haley's been running modifieds. So and so has been running this. So and so has been doing that. How do they perform at the track this weekend? That's all I want to look at. Like last year with Suarez, for example. Like I said, I'm trying to see things, or at least answer questions, or look at things that I think we leaned too much on last year. And so last year we entered Bristol Dirt, Truck Series, Xfinity Series, whatever the case was. We got to play the dirt track racers. We got to play the guys who grew up racing dirt cars. Who won those races? Martin Truex Jr. Oh man, what a dirt guy. Joey Logano. Oh man, what a dirt guy. Who really surprised us? Who came out of nowhere? Daniel Suarez. You know, it was not the dirt guys. Larson started in the back on the truck series, knee deep in the field, having to cut through the field, and he just wasn't able to cut through that field like we see him running in his sprint cars, like we see him running most dirt cars. This was, I hate using the term equalizer. I hate when they just oversaturate the broadcast with, this is the great equalizer. The draft is the great equalizer. Talladega and New Atlanta is a great equalizer. But really, it is, because these cars don't act like any certain type of dirt car. And that's why I don't necessarily want to lean on guys who've been running late models, who've been running modifieds, the past 4 months, and then say, oh, they're going to jump into this car and it's going to run perfectly fine. I do want to add that I believe that the fact that we are running independent rear suspension on this Cup car, I think that makes this car a bit easier to drive on this dirt track. Because when I was looking at the races this, about last month or so, they obviously had a progressive banking this year. They didn't just have it at a single flat angle. And that was one of the main things that I did talk about last year, is that when you don't have any progressive banking on the dirt track with that degree of height, when you enter that corner, your cars just want to get looser and looser. And that's one thing that we saw constantly, either in practice and even in just regular dirt cars going around last year, is they would enter the corner, they'd slide up, and then the car would just want to keep over rotating. And then so like mid corner, the car would either settle down and just want to rotate far left, or it would settle down and you would basically turn the corner into two apexes, to where you have an apex entering and an apex exit, and you're basically driving the center of the corner straight. Them going into the progressive banking this year, is I think it's going to fix that situation. I think it's going to fix the handling and I don't know what this car is wanting to do, feeling some of these drivers had last year. Because now when you enter that corner, you can enter on the bottom. And when your car starts to lean into the corner, because it does have progressive banking, and the entry of the corner seems a lot more forgiving this year than it was last year, by the time you're in the center of the corner, the car's kind of catching itself against the banking. Now, granted, you can still drive stupid, spin it out, but in a very simplistic fashion, this is a much more forgiving type of racetrack they're racing on this year compared to last year. If anything, I think the truck series is going to run into more issues. I think that'll be the more difficult one for the drivers. And I think that, and even with that said, like I said last year, Martin Truex Jr. won. Not necessarily a dirt track guy, just a guy who understood what the car was doing in practice and was able to win the race. We're going to see guys in practice for the truck series clearly look better than other ones. Is it because they're dirt track racers? Is it because they're road course racers? Or is it just because they feel comfortable in the car? And that's what I want to lean on. I just want to lean on specifically what these cars are doing late in practice and in the heat races. Going back to talking about progressive banking and why I believe that the next gen is going to be a bit more forgiving, is that say if you watch like late models or dirt modifieds, and you see whenever they stand on the gas, and certainly when they enter the corner, you'll see the left rear tire, kind of enter the body a little bit, enter the body work. So let's just assume this is the rear end of a modified. You got your left rear right here, right rear right here. Because of the way that the cars are set up, when you stand on the gas, the left rear actually moves forward. It actually drives into. So if the car is like, this is the front end, this is the rear end, the left rear actually pushes itself into the body when you stand on the gas, just due to the bird cage chassis and everything. And so last year, the rear end for these Cup cars were basically just locked. They would not move, in the grand scheme of things. Now you're running each side being able to react differently to the dirt, and I think it's going to be much more forgiving. I think, at least talking suspension wise, I think the rear end is going to handle this track better than it did last year. Now, with that said, just because it handles better doesn't mean it's going to last longer. Doesn't mean it's going to handle the whole way. I'm very much concerned about the right rear braking, or having stuff break at some point in this event, whether it be control arm, whether it be whatever weak link is going to be found in this race at some point. That just because the way that these cars are going to be abused entering this week, entering the Cup Series race on Sunday is going to be really intense for these cars. Um, so I want to put that out there. That's not necessarily like because we haven't seen consistent failures of front end suspensions from like one specific team. We've just seen a lot to where, look, you hit the wall pretty hard, you're gonna end up breaking something. This body is gonna survive just fine. It's all the components underneath that we're worried about. Um, moving forward, I'm trying to answer any. I'm trying to talk about all the questions that I've either gotten already this weekend or that I'm expecting to get at some point at this weekend. Um, so you got it in your mind. Throw out any dirt history, any entering the week with any expectations of, oh, well, I'll probably end up playing this guy because he's good at dirt. Anything like that. Even last year's Bristol dirt race. Look, the first, like a lot of the guys didn't even really have a chance to show up. The race was a freaking mess. We all know that. Oh, but they're running a night this year, so it's not gonna be. It's gonna be dusty because basically these cars can't drive on a real dirt track. They're just having to drive on completely petrified wood of dirt and just dry it out. Anyway, um, it was a mess. You didn't see people passing for the lead. You didn't really see people going through the field. Sure you did over the course of the race, and you'd have guys spin out, and you'd have certain teams take advantage of where they were running and what their competitors were doing, but you really didn't see people coming through the field last year on speed alone. It was mainly attrition plays, and it was because this race got so crazy in terms of like specifically once they went single file, nobody was passing at all. Like even when you look back at how this race ended up, sure you have Suarez. Like I said, Suarez came out, had a fast car, led laps, started 18th, finished fourth. Okay, we had Tyler Reddick start 27th, finish 7th. Okay, clearly that was more so Reddick doing bad in the heat race, starting farther back. Like this isn't like, oh, these guys are just like when you look at these drivers who started in the back last year and the guys who were able to come up through the field, like well, no duh they were able to come through the field. It was Reddick, it was Suarez, it was Jones, it was Elliott, it was Keselowski. Yeah, I mean these guys have skill, you know. Um, so I don't really want to weigh. Um, let me change that. I would rather lean towards playing skilled drivers, guys that I know are going to be good. Not due to dirt history, not due to how they do on road courses, not due to how they do on flat tracks or dirt tracks or anything. Just does a good driver like start close to the back because they had a bad heat race? Like Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin's going to start. Let's say Denny Hamlin has a bad time. He starts 30th. I'll probably end up playing Denny Hamlin starting there because it's him. He has enough skill. Am I going to be overweight on quote unquote like bad drivers? Um, no, I don't think you need to necessarily do that. Like it's very much a like we need the starting grid to talk about stuff. There's not a lot of things I can bring in. I assume it's kind of going downhill now, like circling um, stuff. Main takeaway is just enter this weekend without having any prior interest in dirt racing. Watch this race. Watch the drivers, and God willing, Fox shows people on track. Uh, Watch how the track changes. Watch where guys are running. Do I need to go in? We're not going to bore you there. We've already been there. I'm sure I'll talk about it in the live shows in terms of the track changing and stuff like that. But just pay attention. Let's see who's fast in practice. Let's see who's specifically fast at the end of practice. And do pay attention to who's fast at the start of practice. Do they drop off significantly or do they stay consistent? Because there's a chance that you can have guys that are extremely slow at the start of practice be the faster guys at the end of practice. And due to that, them not finish well in the heat races, but be extremely good for the race. A lot of things to really dive into due to the fact that the track is going to change so much. You have a 50-minute practice session. If you go out on lap 8 on a pretty fresh type of track, and you're the fastest car, and then as the track kind of gets worn in, you get a bit slower and slower. And this is a place where if you're looking at practice data, which if I can't pull, I'll let Pearce do it, but I'm pretty sure I'll be able to pull. Um, specifically look at the lap times. Don't bother looking at mile per hour at the line. This is a race where I want to live and die by the lap time. I'm not wasting time looking at mile per hour, um, because you can see how the track changes by that. You can see who's consistently just more comfortable. Uh, I mean, we're going way deep in the weeds here. Like if you're running, I don't remember what lap times were last year, but say you're running a 19-second lap. You go out early in the race or early in practice and you run a 19:25. You get a bit slower as the track gets worked in. Your times start dropping like a 19:30, 19:35, 19:39, and then all of a sudden the track really gets fast. Now it's kind of worked in. You see guys jump from or you as a driver jumps from that 19:39 to now you're running 19:1s, 19 even, and then you kind of drop back to 19:1s once the course of the race goes. Okay, so you have distinct different times on the track. You have distinct different periods of what the track was doing. So you can either focus primarily on, and this is me trying to answer questions of how to look at practice time in a sense of um, what's important. So you can look at all the practice in general and see how you improved or either lost time. And then once you look at that, you can say, okay, well, what did the track do in the beginning? It was really, I want to say slimy, but it's not going to be slimy for these cars. But it was wet. It was not packed in. It was the start of practice. We didn't have a ton of speed. It was still pretty slick. Okay, so once you identify that type of track, what it's at, where are you on the pylon? Where are you in terms of scoring? Okay, once you take note of that, let's then go to like the 30-minute mark in practice when we were kind of running a bit slower times, but the track was getting closer to being fast, um, which sounds kind of counterintuitive. But are we absolutely dropping in the scoring pylon? Are we about where we are with everybody else? Are we faster than other people at this point? Are we prepared for this point better than other people? And you can check that by then going to the last part of practice. And I don't know why I keep saying it like you're doing. I should be saying the NASCAR drivers. But as the drivers get in the third part, I was going to say third quarter, in the last quarter of practice, um, where are they in terms of speed? Because that's going to be the closest to what the track should continue to do. So if you're looking at it as like a graph, I'm saying you're starting at 1920s, 19, 19, a 19.2, 19.25, whatever the case is, and then you go to a 19.3, 19.35 as the track gets a bit worked in, but your times get shorter, and then you end up going faster. You're at like a 19.1, 19.0, whatever the case is. Take that last section and see what your car is doing, what that driver is doing compared to other people at this one period. And then you can also look at how their little speed graph has gone in terms of comparing it to other drivers. And you can see by going through those steps, you can see who will carry speed on the long runs, who is better prepared for a race that is going to be, multiple laps in. We're not doing a heat race here. We're doing a full, race into the evening here. You can take that. So you take that from practice. And I hope this is making sense. So you take that, you're aware of what people are going to do, and then you basically do the exact same thing for the heat race. But you got to do it in your mind. You got to be really fast because clearly we're going to have the heat race and then a very small amount of time to build lines up until the main event. And so you have to do the exact same thing that you did for practice. Be aware of all the different sections of time. Like if practice is a rectangle, the different sections in this race not only dictate where teams were in times, where they were in possibly getting the car ready, but where the track was in general, or where the track was in that session. Same thing for the heat race. You need to be aware of what each driver in their respective heat race was dealing with. Were they heat race number 1? Were they heat race number 72? Were they the first heat on the track? Did the track go through a significant change between the first two heats and the last two heats, or whatever the case is. You need to be aware of what the track is going through. Excuse me. So you need to be aware of what the track is going to, and then understand, like going back to the practice session, okay, we had, I don't remember how big these heat races are going to be. Say we got 10 guys in heat race number 1. And this track is pretty new. It's not really worked in a lot. But you're going to have some guys look far better than other cars from heat race number 1. Looking back at practice, who did well in practice? Who was well early on a new track? You know, because the winner of heat race number 1 is most likely going to start on the pole, I believe. But they're going to be the guys who were there on the freshest type of track. Can we see that car? Do you see that car replicating what it did in heat race number 1? Like, is it fast in heat race number 1 because it was the fastest in the field or in that heat race based on what they did in the first part of practice? Or was it fastest because it's just the fastest car in that field that just happened to get up to the front? God, I hope this is making sense. I hope I'm not just confusing people beyond belief. But once you get throughout the heat races, like, I specifically want to lean towards cars that look good in later heat races for a potential lap leader, for a potential guy who can hold their position. Because we're gonna have two drastically different types of place differential plays. The first place differential plays we're going to have were from the early heat races that just didn't hit the starting line very fast. The car was clearly not set up for this type of track. The car was just off pace, and you can quickly, easily see by who pulls away early in these heat races and who doesn't. And then you're going to have the guys who are place differential plays because they were part of the last heat, and they were just absolutely slow. However, they were slow, but this is more of what the race is going to be like. So if they're slow in a late heat race, I typically lean more towards they're going to be slow in the race than the guys who were slow in the first heat race. Just due to the fact that the guys are slow in the later heat races, it's only going to get worse. The track is only going to get dried out more. The track's only going to handle worse. Whereas if you're slow on a new track, it typically leaves room for improvement. Is this, like I said, I've said it like 4 times. We're 20 minutes in. I have no idea if I'm making sense or not, but I'm trying to touch on most of the questions that I have. So if you're looking at practice data for Truck Series, Cup Series, whatever the case is, look for, and it's gonna change. It's gonna change an absolute lot. Like, I feel worried about saying the last 15 minutes because I feel the time that I want to specifically look at is probably going to be the last 10, or it's going to be like a legit like a 7-minute chunk of practice to where I liked what that track was doing at that time. I want to see where people were at this point on the track in practice. Like, I want to see, for whatever reason, let's say it's minute 42 of practice, and for whatever reason, I just like how that track is looking. I like how it's acting. I like how it's reacting to cars. I want to judge everybody by that time. That's something you're going to have to do. It's not just let's just look at 5 lap averages. Let's just look at 10 lap, 25 lap averages. I think that's not the way to go about it. You're gonna if you're playing this, either tune into live shows or be prepared to like dive in and do a lot of work. In my opinion, it's not just reading off the spreadsheet. It's not just like, oh, so and so had the best 5 lap average. But when did he run that? I don't know. He has the best 5 lap average. No, you need to know when he ran that. Did he run that in the last part of the race or last part of the practice? Did he run that at the end of practice? All that's important. So yeah, I'm going to be live Saturday and Sunday for both the Truck and Cup Series races. I think this is all I'm going to do in terms of early week preview videos because I want to see the cars on track. We really can't do much from that. And then clearly next week we're at Talladega. And so I don't plan on putting out a ton of pre-week content right now. It's mainly just me being here for the live shows and still doing the PDF, still doing all the projections and stuff that I normally do. But that's why I think this is pretty much going to be the only dirt preview video I do outside of the live shows. Outside of that, maybe if this helps you, maybe it just confused the heck out of you. Whatever the case is, thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting Pearce and myself. And check out Pearce's video that he put up, how to read the DFS NASCAR spreadsheet that uh, you get by signing up on the Patreon. I'm glad he made that so I can just start sending that people's way when they have questions on how to read it. And hopefully that shows you a good, at least a good intro. Like that, you still get more stuff. You still get the lap by lap data, the pit data, but that sheet is freaking awesome. And it's easy to read. Is it not easy to read? Like now that you have, this is how you read it. This is what everything is. Is that not the easiest sheet that you've ever read? It has so much information on the screen, but it's not overwhelming. It's easy to read. There's sheets out there that are absolutely ugly, hard to read. I don't think this one is at all. I love the product. I love what we use. It's what I use. It's what you should be using. I would not be putting time and effort into this if I did not believe in the product. So yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Hopefully this helps you out. If not, still, if you're in the Discord, shoot me questions. I'll be able to answer stuff leading into the weekend. Tweet at me or DM me on Twitter. I'll try to answer you the best I can. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys for the live shows this week. I'm not sure what time I'm going to do it on, what time I'm going to do them at. It's gonna be interesting. I will say this. I don't plan on playing a lot of lines personally for myself. I'd rather cover stuff in a good way and not really just piss away any money this weekend. That's next weekend at Talladega. But yeah, thank you guys for watching and I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you for being here.